Hi guys, welcome back to our course. A shorter video this time, but in its spirit very similar to the theme of many of my videos. In this course, you've got my videos and you've also got exercises, written material, uploaded PDFs. I'm sure you've noticed by now, I'm using these videos as a chance to focus on troubleshooting activities. I want to help you correct problematic language usage. And that really is the theme of this video here as well. This week, false friends and problematic Anglicisms, confusing words, common mistakes. False friends. There's a famous joke, isn't there? The German is in a restaurant, he's ordered his meal and he's waiting for his food, which is taking longer than expected. And he's looking a little bit stressed, a little bit annoyed, throwing angry glances at the waiter. And after a while, he gets so impatient, he speaks to the waiter and he says, "When do I become a sausage?" My British friends are really laughing right now. So this is a joke playing with that false friend, become. Okay. You get false friends in jokes. You get false friends in business English. You know, be careful if you want to speak to the boss. Don't say, "Can I speak to the chef?" Because the chef is somebody who works in a kitchen, not as manager of a company. We get false friends in academic English as well. Indeed, the word academic is itself a kind of false friend. She's an academic. She's somebody who works at the university. She's a scholar. She researches, she teaches, she writes books and papers. In the German language, academikerin would be a little bit different, wouldn't it? Academikerin really is just somebody that has a university degree. So as you can see, we've got words which look very similar in our languages. They look like they're friends. They look as if they want to help us and support us, like our friends do. But they're actually false friends. Indeed, starting off with a joke or giving you these other painful mistakes makes you aware of the fact that sometimes a false friend can do you harm. You know, these are not just neutral things. They really are quite problematic. You're actually saying something which you think you are not saying. You know, what you're saying is different to what you want to say. So false friends are dangerous, and that's why it's a theme for one of these videos. Good, let's move on to the university now. University examples of false friends. Why do we have to be careful with the following words? Eventually, actually, and however. I want you to natter with your partner. Pause this video now, natter with your partner. What did you come up with? Well, we can talk about these words in our video sessions together, but these words are confusing for quite simple reasons. They mean completely different things from the German words, which they look like. Eventually means sooner or later. Okay, eventually I'll finish the course. I don't know when, but I will finish it. Actually means in fact. We often use it as a filler word when speaking. I think I use it a lot. My kids have picked it up from me using it in English, or maybe they've picked it up from Harry Potter. I don't know. Very common expression used, actually, in fact. However is a wonderful word in academic English. The word but is a little bit problematic in the English language. Firstly, it sounds harsh, and secondly, you can't start a sentence with it. Two big problems. This means that if I'm using but, my sentence is getting long because the but's in the middle. And however's a beautiful alternative, which you can start a sentence with. So you can say a short idea, present a short idea, and then contradict it in some way using the word however. A nice word for but. So I've described 3 English words, and my descriptions haven't matched the meanings of the German words which you were thinking of seeing those English words. A classic situation with these false friends. So maybe I was surprising you with one of those meanings. And the words that we have here are not eventuell, they're not aktuell, they're not wie auch immer. Okay, they're really quite different words used in quite different situations. So false friends, dangerous things. Goes without saying, on the internet you'll find interesting lists of these, well worth checking out to make sure that you're not falling into those traps. Talk about false friends brings us to Denglish. Wo ist mein Handy? Ich muss den Beamer anschalten. Or wie finden Sie mein neues body bag? And look at this, guys. I've actually got one. This is actually David Beckham's son. One of David Beckham's sons actually has one of these. This is. Oh, you can't see it. There you are. Hang on. I'll do a kind of fashion show thing. This is my new body bag. You're not impressed, are you? Let me get my computer straight again. So I'm going to take this off, actually. Where is my handy? I have to turn on the beamer. How do you like my new body bag? Why might a Brit or an American laugh? Pause here and natter with your partner. What did you come up with? I mean, they're all silly words, aren't they? They're so silly. And actually, silly can be quite nice. Silly's fun. But there's something embarrassing about these words. If you say those 3 sentences in English, you know, you really are coming across as being an uncool German rather than a cool one. It kind of is fun to call a mobile phone, a mobile phone a handy. That's kind of fun because it is a handy thing to have, isn't it? And that was probably its first asset when it was invented. Oh, but this is mine, by the way. Have a look at this, guys. Can you see that? Tintin. Big Belgium fan. Like Belgium after Finland. Lots of countries I like. Tintin's great. Tintin's, of course, the second best thing in Belgium. Chocolates in 3rd place. Waffles in 4th. Where were we? I'm sorry, I was getting diverted. Back to our topic. Where's my handy? Yeah, it's a mobile phone, isn't it? Handy is a silly English word that only Germans use. How embarrassing. One of my business English students 20 years ago, back in the year 2000, he lost his whilst in a London hotel, and he went to the hotel reception and explained angrily, my handy has been stolen. But very, very funny to see the look on this poor hotel receptionist's face. So, you know, these are particularly dangerous false friends. Beamer, you know, this projector on the wall that's used to project a PowerPoint or the film onto the screen. It's not a beamer. Beamer sounds like something from Star Trek. It makes us think of the 1960s. You know, this is embarrassing stuff. Body bags, you know, are not these funky bags that David Beckham's son wears, but rather those black bags that you put dead people in. So again, you can see the absolute wondrous idiocy of these German words. They're just so idiotic. It really is embarrassing. It's not just bad, it's embarrassing. In fact, there's a whole bunch of weird deaf false friends in German. When you watch a football game in the pub with your mates, okay, when you watched a football film in the pub with your mates last year before Corona, you called it a public viewing. That's so weird, because for us, a public viewing is seeing a dead body. Oh, it was so weird. And my kids listen to CDs. Drei Fragezeichen, very funny, comes from English stories. All the English names are untranslated, and Dad is dead in those stories. Isn't that lovely? You know, death as a father figure. There's something strangely Freudian there. It's a bit like Darth Vader, isn't it? Sorry, I'm really getting diverted today. I really should stay on topic. Sorry, guys. As you can see, this is all funny. It's also embarrassing for you if you're making these mistakes. So what you've got here are examples of pseudo-Anglicisms. You know, you're taking an English word and using it in German, but you're taking the wrong word. You know, somebody did that knowing it was the wrong word. What's the problem with this? I think that question's almost rhetorical, isn't it? Maybe the second question is more interesting. How can I spot if a German word is actually a pseudo-Anglicism? Because you might not have known that those words were fake. You might have been calling this a body bag with your English friends, and that's embarrassing, isn't it? How do I know if I'm using a pseudo-Anglicism rather than a real one? What can we say about real Anglicisms? I mean, ultimately, if you really want to know what word is authentic or not, you just have to immerse yourself in that language. You know, a trip to England or America is a great way to listen out for that vocabulary. Ultimately, you have to read a lot, you have to watch a lot of films. The more you immerse yourself in the authentic culture, the more you'll be sensitized to these Anglicisms. It's actually a fun thing to do in your first 6 months in a foreign culture. Let's move on though. It's worth noting at the university, I think we have more good news than bad news. Anglicisms at university tend to be pretty okay. Fortunately, we can say many university Anglicisms, they're real, they're not pseudo, they have a similar use to the English original. You're in a course in Vechta, one of your professors talks about gender, you know, that really is okay. He or she is using that term in more or less the same way as they would in the English language. If I'm going to be really precise, I should note though that most real Anglicisms, they're used in slightly different ways in English and German. It's never an exact equivalence. You know, the translation is never 100%. It's at best 95%. A really nice illustration of this, if you take the modern word queer, It's a really interesting word. It's got a fascinating history, in part a horrible history, and it's used in slightly different ways in the German language and the English language. And I think I could say a linguist, you could write a dissertation on the difference between queer in English and queer in the German language practice. So it can be really, really fascinating. Often the same word with more or less the same meaning, sometimes quite fascinating differences. So this topic becomes quite fun, quite fascinating. Again, my tip is when you're with native speakers, listen out for subtle differences in meaning. And if you live in another country, this is something you'll find yourself doing, particularly in your first year or so. You'll be registering fascinating, subtle differences of meaning. I like it. I think it's a fun activity to do. But I'm mentioning these fake Anglicisms, these pseudo-Anglicisms. I'm mentioning this Denglish because it can be quite problematic. And another example of where it becomes problematic when we get lazy with our translations. What's wrong with the following social care terminology? So I've picked 3 English expressions here. What's wrong with these expressions? Youth officers are first, person of a migratory background is the second, and social management is the third. These are examples I often give to my students. What's wrong with these expressions in English? Have a natter, discuss with your neighbour. What have you come up with? I'm guessing you guessed. Each of these look just like German formulations, and we've translated the German formulation word for word. Okay. If you want to get family services in Germany, you go to a Jugendamt. Nobody knows why it's called that, because it's not really an office for young people at all. It's an office primarily used by families, by parents with their children. So this family office in Germany we call a youth office. We call it a Jugendamt. But it's not, that expression, youth office, is not an English term. Actually, Brits and Americans call that a social services department. Interesting, huh? A person of a migratory background. In Germany, if my parents don't have German blood, then I'm a person with a Migrationshintergrund. Isn't that bizarre? You think it's not bizarre, but if you're not in Germany with native speakers' ears, it's a funny expression. I'm always looking behind me, this Hintergrund which I have, or my kids have. I'm always looking behind me. So again, you can't say that in English. Don't forget, the English speaking countries, the Anglo-Saxon world is very multicultural. Everybody in America has migration somewhere in their recent family tree. Social management, once again, I've taken a German word, Sozialmanagement, something like social work management in English, but I've translated it word for word, leaving out the middle term. So problematic. These expressions are Denglishy, basically. You're not really speaking English if you use them. You're speaking Denglish, okay? And again, in Germany, we're quite laid back about a bit of Denglish. We quite like to create new words. It's a fun thing to do. That's not done in the English language so much. The English language is spoken by so many more people than German. German's language is spoken by 100 million native speakers. The English language is spoken as a first language alone by like 500 million, and maybe as a second language by the other half of the world's population. So, note this fact. This creating of new words, that expression will do. That's not how it works speaking English at the university. Ultimately, you're forced to constantly ask yourself, are they understanding me? And if they are understanding you, they'll be asking questions after your presentation. They'll be listening to your presentation rather than playing with their Hindi. So, are they understanding me? Are they interested in what I'm saying? If I say something, does their comment relate to what I was saying? So you've got lovely check mechanisms that are naturally there. My tips, read a lot. You just have to get out there and read a lot. In your area, management, soziale Dienstleistungen, there's a whole bunch of books in English. Read them, or at least look at them, flick through them. Reflect on the language people are really using. Choose your words carefully. Don't get into bad habits. I'm speaking to your students. Some of you are quite new in Vechta. That's lovely. Get into good habits now. I said at the beginning of this video, it's a kind of troubleshooting video. I want to stop you making mistakes. It's a bit like when you learn to drive. You get into a car and you think, all right, this is a bit like playing a computer game. I can more or less do this. And what your driving instructor, what your driving teacher, a kind of trainer really, what they're doing is they're stopping you getting into bad habits and making sure that you do everything carefully and correctly. And it's nice to do the same with academic language. There you are. Hope you've enjoyed this video. We've got loads of stuff to talk about in our session. Looking forward to that. Thanks for listening, guys.